John Henry Newman. Like Thomas Carlyle, John Henry Newman powerfully affected the thinking of his contemporaries, whether they agreed or disagreed with him. Even today, according to Martin Svaglak, Newman attracts both apotheosizers and calumniators who praise or blame him as an unusually compelling spokesman for what some consider eternal verities and others regressive myths. During his long lifetime, Newman frequently found himself at the center of some of the most intense disputes that stirred Victorian England, disputes in which he himself emerged as a controversialist of great skill, engagingly persuasive in defense of his position, and devastatingly effective in disposing of opponents. Thomas Hardy, whose position was at the opposite extreme from Newman's, paid him a high compliment when he noted in his diary, "Worked at J. H. Newman's Apologia, which we have all been talking about lately. Style charming, and his logic really human, being based not on syllogisms, but on converging probabilities, only, and here comes the fatal catastrophe, there is no first link to his excellent chain of reasoning, and down you come headlong." Newman was born in London, the son, like Robert Browning, of a banker. In his spiritual autobiography, Apologia pro vita sua, in effect his vindication of his life, 1864-65, he traces the principal stages of his religious development from the strongly Protestant period of his youth to his conversion to Roman Catholicism in 1845. Along the way, after being elected to a fellowship at Oriel College in Oxford and becoming an Anglican clergyman, he was attracted briefly into the orbit of religious liberalism. Gradually coming to realize, however, that liberalism, with its reliance on human reason, would be powerless to defend traditional religion from attack, Newman shifted over into the new High Church wing of the Anglican Church and soon was recognized as the leading figure of what was known as the Oxford movement. During the 1830s, he built up a large and influential following by his sermons at Oxford and also by his writing of tracts, that is, appeals in pamphlet form, on behalf of a cause. In these publications, he developed arguments about the powers of church versus state and other issues of deep concern to his high church colleagues, or Tractarians, as they were also called. Newman's own efforts to demonstrate the true Catholicity of the Church of England provoked increasing opposition as his position grew closer to Roman Catholicism. Distressed by constant denunciations, he withdrew into isolation and silence. After much reflection, he took the final step. At the age of 44, he entered the Roman Catholic priesthood and moved to Birmingham, where he spent the rest of his life. In 1879, he was created cardinal. In 1991, at the instigation of Pope John Paul II, his title became the Venerable John Henry Cardinal Newman, marking the first of 3 stages toward sainthood. In view of this development, Newman's response to a woman who had spoken of him as a saint is touching. In some distress he wrote to her, "Saints are not literary men, they do not love the classics, they do not write tales." Although the story of Newman's development seems to emphasize change, certain features remain constant. His sense of God's guidance is especially evident. Characteristic is a poem written in Italy in 1834, following a severe illness, which opens with the line, "Lead, kindly light," and concludes with this stanza, "So long thy power hath blessed me, sure it still will lead me on, o'er moor and fen, o'er crag and torrent, till the night is gone, and with the morn those angel faces smile, which I have loved long since, and lost a while." Set to music, Newman's poem became one of the most popular hymns ever written. The writing of verse, however, was a subordinate task for Newman. Most of his writings are prose, and it is noteworthy that despite his mastery of prose style, Newman found the act of composition to be even more painfully difficult than most of us do. During his years at Birmingham, he was nevertheless prompted to write several books, including works of religious poetry and fiction. Of particular interest are Newman's lectures on the aims of education, which were delivered in Dublin at the newly founded Catholic University of Ireland, a university he led for a few years as rector. These lectures, published in 1852 and later titled "The Idea of a University," are a classic statement on the value of the disciplined intellect that can be developed by a liberal education rather than by a technical training. Like the later lectures of Matthew Arnold and T.H. Huxley, the idea of a university shows the Victorian engagement with the role of education in society. Moreover, its exploration of the qualities of the ideal gentleman also speaks to a concern of his time. This classic definition is essential reading for those interested in debates about Victorian gender roles. It should be noted that Newman's view of a liberal education is largely independent of his religious position. Such an education, he said, could form the minds of profligates and anti-clericals, as well as of saints and priests of the Church. In considerable measure, his view reflects his admiration for the kind of intellectual enlargement he had himself enjoyed as an undergraduate at Trinity College, Oxford. One of the most moving passages in Newman's autobiography is the account of his farewell to an Oxford friend in February 1846, as he was preparing his final departure from the precincts of the university he loved. In him I took leave of my first college, Trinity, which was so dear to me. There used to be much snapdragon growing on the walls opposite my freshmen's rooms there, and I had taken it as the emblem of my perpetual residence even unto death in my university. On the morning of the 23rd I left the observatory. I have never seen Oxford since, excepting its spires, as they are seen from the railway.